Ross and Rachel not only were one of the worst couples to ever become the it couple of a show and had their arcs ruined because of the relationship, but the show sacrificed everyone else's arcs because of them as well. These two were the it couple of the show Friends from the moment the pilot premiered. The hints towards Ross and Rachel ending up together were there from the start, but the showrunners ruined what could have been a fun ride for the sake of drama. Friend group-oriented sitcoms often have it couples that everybody will fall in love with, and they derive most of the overall storylines of the seasons. But back when Friends was about to become a thing, this wasn't the case. Friends not only started a new tradition, but it also sacrificed the quality of itself for the sake of Ross and Rachel ending up together. In the first season, this couple would go through tests and trials. Most of the weight, however, was on Ross, who had a crush on Rachel since their time in high school. These tests would be things like Paolo, a boyfriend of Rachel, who would torture Ross with his presence or having bad luck every time he wanted to confess his feelings for Rachel, like Marcel going missing. At the end of season 1, however, things would flip and Rachel would grow feelings for Ross after Chandler accidentally told her that Ross loves her. But by then, Ross had a new girlfriend. The issue started right here and now, but it wasn't this big. Rachel, now in the same position where Ross was when she was with Paolo, would try some ways to get over Ross, sometimes failing to the point of sabotaging Julie and Ross's relationship. But things didn't just end here. In the episode 7 of season 2, after Ross and Rachel kiss, while Ross is still with Julie, the relationship that kept most attention through these episodes was finally broken up. After Julie goes to the coffee house to pick her stuff up, she meets a guy named Russ, also played by David Schwimmer. Ross went on a date with Rachel, but Rachel dumped him after she got what she wanted. The cheating aspect of Ross and Julie's relationship is forgotten when Julie seems to be attracted to Ross. That's how the first of many women who would be hurt by these two was solved out of the plot. Ross and Rachel would not get together, however, until the 14th episode of season 2, when Rachel watched a videotape of Ross and herself when they were in high school. Skipping almost a season over, the writers decided to shake things up a bit and break up the relationship. While this can be normal for a TV show to break up their it couple for more tension and drama, the way they did it hit one of the 6 arcs of the show and eventually made Ross one of the most hated characters in the history of TV.
We were on a break.
Episode 16 of season 3, in my opinion, is one of the funniest and best ones in the entire show. While Ross and Rachel seem to be having their worst day of their lives, their friends are stuck in Monica's room and are creating very iconic moments.
We could eat the wax. It's organic.
Oh, great. Food with hair on it.
Maybe she killed him.
Should we do something?
Yeah, never cheat on Rachel.
Rachel, I wanted to tell you. And Chandler and Joey convinced me not to.
Wax the door shut. We're never leaving up.
While there were numerous ways to break up Ross and Rachel, cheating, while intense and actually reasonable, was in fact a bad decision. First, because of the seemingly pattern in Ross's behavior in cheating, and secondly, because for keeping the tension alive, both of them had to be stubborn and not give up their arrogance, which made Ross into an unlikable character, because in this situation, Rachel was right. Ross, for sticking to something everyone knows was wrong, would create a very unlikable pattern. Beyond that, Chandler and Joey seemed to be okay with this and wanted Ross to hide the affair to keep the relationship alive, which also ruined their arcs as well. Even if we could fit it into Joey's arc, it was really unlikely of Chandler to say something like that. At the end of the day, he was also Rachel's friend, but things wouldn't simply end here, and it is because the writers were determined to prove to us that Ross and Rachel belonged to each other. If this was the case, one of the two things would happen. First, they would get together in the finale, which wouldn't have made sense if they were apart that long, or become on again, off again, not being able to decide what to do. There was also a third option of letting them work out their their problems a while after their breakup, it wouldn't have had the drama the writers wanted. So Ross and Rachel became on again, off again. First relationship to be sabotaged for them would be Ross and Bonnie. Ross again cheats on Bonnie while Rachel sabotages it. But after Bonnie breaks up with Ross, the two realize they can work things out and it's better to stay broken up. Mid-season 4, Rachel grows feelings for one of her clients named Joshua, and when she gets an opportunity to go out with him, she agrees, knowing she's already promised her boss to take out his niece who has come from London. She then convinces Ross to go out with this girl who happens to be Emily. The night turns into a disaster for Rachel, but Ross and Emily have a fun night, ending up in Vermont. The same series of pities and jealousies from Rachel goes on for this relationship as well. Ross and Emily, facing a long-distance problem, decide to marry each other, and Emily agrees to move to New York. But Rachel decides to crash the wedding and shows up surprisingly. On her way to London, she tells the story to her travel companions, one of whom gives a very good answer to her.
You love this man, and yet you're about to ruin the happiest day of his life.
This shows that the showrunners were aware of the other end of things while they decide to go with all of these decisions. In my mind, Emily and Ross's relationship could go wrong for numerous reasons, but adding the Rachel part to the equation created a self-absorbed plan for the two to go on. In my belief, the shock value of Chandler and Monica would become the thing to hold the show together. And it happened at a good time. They truly saved the show from a couple who were too childlike to admit their feelings for each other and also too immature to move on from a relationship that they knew wasn't working. Monica's arc was also at stakes here because she was Ross's sister and she couldn't say much about how wrong everything was. But I have to admit something here. Monica was also the one who would call out both of them on the stupid things they were doing. But because she was Rachel's best friend and also Ross's sister, she couldn't say much before taking sides. So most of the times, she would also stay silent. Season 5 continued the ridiculous behavior of Rachel wanting to admit her feelings for Ross, but the storyline was quickly dropped and forgotten. It only served the purpose of throwing Emily out of the story, which could be done in so many ways. Maybe they could have solved it with less tension and supposed cliffhangers by Ross and Emily realizing that they're rushing things. This rabbit hole that started with Rachel wanting to confess to Ross resulted in Ross having anger issues, being suspended from his job, losing his house, and a series of unfortunate events. While Emily seems to be a hated character on Friends, and many consider her to be the reason why Ross became miserable in season 5, I totally understand her feelings towards Rachel. The controlling side of her was something annoying, but still understandable if you think about what Ross did at their wedding. After this, it takes a while for Ross to get into a serious relationship. He eventually would find someone, Mona, which I think was Ross's best girlfriend. They met at Chandler and Monica's wedding, but there seemed to be one problem. A problem named Rachel, who became pregnant after having a one-night stand with a condom past its expiration date. This was the moment where I felt so exhausted with these two. I felt like the writers were absolutely drained out of ideas to put something like this on the table, and still for them to decide to be just friends was beyond my imagination. Mona becomes a collateral damage just like everyone else in the show. She felt like everything is too weird in her relationship, but she wasn't wrong. Meanwhile, Ross and Rachel welcomed their child to the world at the end of season 8. At this point, I thought, it's either now or never. This was the perfect opportunity to bring them back together and show them as new parents, but also show how Ross would take care of Rachel. But of course, this also wouldn't have mattered, and just like any other plotline, it would result in a childlike fight about two people who can't seem to talk their way out of anything, and they continue to remain friends and date other people. But the weirdest situation would be Charlie Joey, Ross, and Rachel, which is what in the swingers god is going on here. The plot lines are so bad and unnecessary that the writers themselves get rid of them all before season 10 ends. Season 10 ends with Ross and Rachel ending up together, but at this point, I felt like it was forced. If failed marriages, a baby, and numerous failed relationships wouldn't teach them to work things out, what made them want to be with each other? I was a fan of seeing them together, going through things like Monica and Chandler did, and ending up together could easily result in another breakup. I think the best person to actually call out Rachel or even Ross was Monica, by the way. The other ones just became numb to them after a while, which ruined most of their arcs. The fact that they mixed Joey and Rachel and dragged on the tiring plotline for 2 seasons before closing it in literally 1 episode was very dumb. But despite all I've said, Friends is still one of my favorite shows. So what do you think about all this? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time.